I know I talk a lot about clinical trials, and you know that I've participated in a few, and you're thinking maybe you would do that too, but you just aren't sure you have all the information. Well, I can't give you all the information, but I think I can give you some. Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of You and Me and Multiple Sclerosis. My name is Pam, and I've been living with MS for 40 years. And I have, as I've said, participated in a number of clinical trials, and I highly recommend them for a number of reasons, not least of which is the benefit that you might be providing to the whole MS community. But there's also personal benefits, whether or not you're in the arm of the trial with the intervention or the arm of the trial that's the placebo, because you do get to know the doctors and the other clinical trial staff in a way and on a level that you wouldn't normally. And I find that to be very, very rewarding. I wanted to play a short video for you today that I found. It comes out of OHSU, Oregon Health and Science University, where I go for all my neurology. I did not know that this was from OHSU when I found it until I looked at who actually put the video out. But I think it does a really good job of covering most of the basics. So let's just take a look together.
This video is made to help you understand clinical trials and answer some common questions regarding its process. Clinical trials are part of clinical research and are at the heart of all medical advances. Clinical trials look at new ways to prevent, detect, and treat disease. One of the ways to know if a particular medicine or treatment works is to study them thoroughly in the targeted population. Thanks to clinical trials, doctors and scientists can find out which medicines and treatments can best improve health. Clinical trials also help discover if a medicine causes unwanted symptoms like headaches, fevers, redness, or swelling. These are called side effects or adverse effects, which are monitored in trials. What are the different types of clinical trials? There are several types of clinical trials, including prevention trials, screening trials, and treatment trials. Not all clinical trials involve testing new drugs. Some studies, such as a biobank study, may review human biological samples and medical information about patients, while another type of trial, called observational study, may gather information to spot treatment experiences, trends, and unnoticed important factors about the condition. In trials to study drugs or treatments, there are 4 phases of testing. Phase 1, trials where medicines are tested for safety. A study is developed for a group of 20 to 100 healthy people who take a small amount of a given medicine and are monitored for any effects on their bodies. Phase 2 trials are conducted to determine the appropriate amount of medicine for each type of patient. 100 to 500 patients participate. A minimum amount of medicine is also tested to discover how it might improve people's health and what side effects may happen. Scientists test medicines to understand their side effects. Patients should tell their doctors if they feel any discomfort or strange sensations. Phase 3 trials, where approximately 1,000 to 5,000 patients participate, have the medicine compared with currently available treatments or with a placebo if there are no treatments for the disease. If there are side effects, scientists also evaluate if the new drug is the best possible option over current therapies. Phase 4 trials, where the efficacy and safety of a medicine continues to be studied after it is already on the market to look out for any additional findings in the long term. Each study has its own rules about who can or cannot participate based on age, gender, type of disease, and various other factors. So not everyone is chosen to participate. What is a placebo and why is it given during clinical trials? A placebo is an inactive substance that looks and is used in the same way as an active drug or treatment being tested. The effects of the active drug or intervention are compared to the effects of the placebo or inactive substance. Because a placebo isn't an active treatment, it does not have a significant effect, allowing researchers to compare the results from it to those from the actual drug to determine a drug's effectiveness. Why should clinical trials include a diverse group of people? Many people experience both diseases and treatments differently, making it essential for clinical trials to include people across living conditions and characteristics such as race, ethnicity, age, and sex, so everyone can benefit from scientific advances. The benefits of new medicines must always outweigh their risks. Yet, for some populations like, say, in women and children, not all medicines and treatments prescribed to them may have been studied exclusively for them. Therefore, inclusion guidelines have adopted the need to increase diverse groups ranging in race, ethnicity, age, and sex to be tested in clinical trials. Why should one want to take part in clinical trials? Having more diverse groups participate help researchers find better treatments for others in the future. Joining any clinical trial is completely voluntary, and you get to decide if you want to participate or leave a trial whenever you want. If you decide to participate, all your information is confidential. To conclude, the process that a medicine or treatment follows until it gets to our home is rigorous and long. From the initial idea at the laboratory until the medicine is tested and finally approved, more than 12 years may go by. And many ideas get dropped along the way. Only 1 out of 10,000 medicines under research go to market. Without research, there would be no scientific improvements or new medicines. The step you take to join a clinical trial will help people and scientists all over the world. We hope this information helps you to consider participating in a clinical trial that you are eligible for. If you have any additional questions about clinical trials or participating in one, talk to your primary care provider.
Okay, now a couple of things I want to clarify that are important to know. Number one, a number of the clinical trials do have age limits, and they have age limits on the low end, and they have age limits on the upper end. And at 65, I'm finding that I qualify for fewer and fewer clinical trials. I think it might be because when people get older, they tend to have what they call comorbidities, other things going on, and that skews the data, unfortunately. But even if you're a very healthy person, I guess they figure actuarially there's more likelihood that you're going to die. I don't know why else they wouldn't. Because if you can make it to 65 and you have had MS for a long time, I would think they'd really want to know more about you. And they'd want you involved in these studies. But hey, that's just me. And I understand they have a right to make sure that they get the best quality data that they can. And if there are any possibilities that the data may be compromised, they're not going to want to go with that. The other thing that I think is important to point out is that this video was highly skewed toward a medication being clinically trialed. And I will admit that that is the vast majority of the clinical trials that you hear about. But the ones that I've been involved in have by and large not had anything to do with a pharmaceutical. They've been more about lifestyle interventions. OHSU is really big on that, and I've gone through a couple of clinical trials there that did not involve pharmaceuticals. And I've ventured to say there are quite a few of them out there if you just want to look for them. One I did that I feel that I really benefited from, not because I was in the experimental arm, but because what I learned from it got me thinking differently about my lifestyle, was the one on exercise and remyelination. The paper that's coming out of that is showing a very strong correlation between exercise and remyelination. I'm all about that. So even though I was in the control arm, I went out and got myself a recumbent exercise bike, and I have been doing it pretty much every day. So clinical trials can create a very big benefit in your life, whether you get the intervention or not. I thought it would be helpful for those considering being part of a clinical trial to look at part of an article that was published on the WebMD website, Clinical Trials, A Guide, and this was published on October 4th of 2024. I'm just going to jump down to this section, important questions to ask, and you might look at this as sort of a checklist that if the clinical trial description does not provide you enough information, you might ask your doctor or the person who is coordinating the clinical trial these questions. Number one, what is the purpose of the clinical trial? Well, if the clinical trial description doesn't make that clear, then I would be really leery of getting involved in that trial. But if you have other clarifying questions along that line, you might want to ask them. Number two, what kinds of tests and treatments does the clinical trial involve, and how are these tests given? You can find that level of detail most of the time when you look through the many, many pages of the consent form, but just in case you want sort of a summary or you have a question about exactly why this test or what it involves or what's going to be done with the information, that's a good thing to remember to ask. And then number three, what is likely to happen in my case with or without this new research treatment? Are there standard treatments for my case, and how does this study compare with them? And this is very good to know because you might benefit from this trial, assuming that you are part of the interventional arm of the trial. Or you might even face some side effects or some harm. It's very, very important to know what is the cost benefit, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. Is there going to be a benefit to humanity for doing this trial? And I assume that if we're going to get a trial funded, it's got to have some kind of stated benefit, but it might be good to discuss that with the coordinator of the trial. And then number four, how could the clinical trial affect my daily life? Well, that's an important one to know. The one that I'm about to do for cancer, one of the side effects says that a very common side effect is hair loss. And I thought, well, this is really lovely. Since I wear my hair long, I guess maybe I better be thinking about what I'm going to do if my hair starts falling out. It's good to know that before you sign on to the trial. If you really can't stand that idea, don't even go there. But there could be other things that would be less dire, maybe that you might be more tired or that it might affect certain things. You would want to know that. Again, this may be outlined in the description, but the clinical trial coordinator, in conjunction with other medical professionals involved in the trial, should know based on your particular case what's likely to happen, and you might want to find out. Number five, what side effects can I expect from the clinical trial? Note, there can also be side effects from standard treatments and unpleasant effects from the disease itself. Well, I guess I feel like saying no duh. Living with MS is no picnic. But that doesn't mean that I am more inclined to want to take a medication that's going to have yet another set of side effects, because I'm already dealing with side effects from MS. I really need to be sure that I'm comfortable and ready to sign on to whatever happens. Number six, how long will the clinical trial last? That's very important to know. How many times do you have to make the trip to the site where the clinical trial is taking place? The one I'm doing in Seattle, fortunately, about halfway through it, I can begin my radiation, but I still have to go up and back at least 2 times just for the clinical trial. And Seattle is about 4 hours away on a good day. So that's not a trivial thing if I have to do it a bunch of times. Number 7, will the clinical trial require extra time on my part? I believe the answer is going to be yes. I don't see how it cannot be, but you might want to find out what the time commitment is for the trial. And then number 8, will I have to be hospitalized? If so, how often and for how long? And that is important also to know. And the other thing you might want to ask there is, if I do have to be hospitalized, who's going to pay for that? Am I supposed to pay for that with my insurance, or is the clinical trial going to pay for that? Is there going to be a big wrangling over whether the clinical trial caused the problem or whether my disease course caused the problem or whether there was something else? I don't want to find that out the hard way when I'm lying in a hospital bed. Number 9, if I agree to withdraw from the clinical trial, will my care be affected? And will I need to change doctors? The answer to that question should be no. I'm thinking. Maybe I'm not understanding that question correctly, but if you already have a doctor that you go to for multiple sclerosis and you withdraw from a clinical trial, I cannot imagine why your regular MS doctor would no longer see you. But you might want to check if you have any doubt about that. Well, I hope all that answered some of your questions at least. If you have other ones, I can do my best to either answer them based on my own experience or dig around some more and find out. Let me know in the comments. But that's all I have for you today. So, in the meantime, and until I see you again in my next video, please do take really good care of yourself